Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson-Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. It's good to be with you here on this Monday, February 16th. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Currently just about 59 minutes away from the planned launch of the Falcon 9 rocket you see there on your screen. Standing in the launch position at Space Launch Complex 40, there at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. On board are 29 Starlink V2 Mini optimized satellites, getting ready to head into low Earth orbit on what's set to be SpaceX's 14th Starlink mission of the year. As we're getting rolling, I want to thank our moderator in the chat. We've got Jeff Hansen and moderators in the chat, Jeff Hansen and Aussie Space Girl with us this evening. You can help make the mods' jobs that much easier just by following our live chat rules. We ask that you post your message in English so that the mods can respond as appropriate. We would ask, though, that you hold off from delving into topics of overt politics or religion, and please don't type using all caps. Emojis are perfectly fine. We just would request that you don't create a huge block of them so it takes up a large chunk of the live chat. And last but certainly not least, we ask that you treat each other with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated. We'll all get along swimmingly. I want to thank the more than 400 of you who are watching along with us live for this mission. Appreciate you either staying up late or getting up early, depending on where in the world you are. If you haven't already, you could do us big favors by clicking that like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. Our thanks as well to one of our channel members, Cumulus Granatus, who's here with us in the chat to help answer folks' questions as we go throughout the coverage. This and every other live launch opportunity are made possible in no small part thanks to our wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. So thanks to folks like Elizabeth Hopner, Rocket Lady Elizabeth, Twilight Speak, and many others for being with us tonight and other broadcasts as well. I'm Teresa. Good evening to you. Virginia Ramirez. Hello, hello. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course, the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. Last little bit of housekeeping. If you have a comment or question about this mission or other goings-on in the realm of space or spaceflight, or like Elizabeth, just want to offer a little bit of support for the coverage tonight, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature. And not only will he be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count, but you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that, my friends, is always greatly appreciated. Thanks to Rocket Lady Elizabeth for the $5 Super Chat. Really appreciate that. Big thanks to one of our channel members, Artemis, for being with us tonight, kicking off the stream with 50 gifted memberships. So to our newest members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. And be sure to thank Artemis in the live chat if you haven't already. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership beyond the month you were just gifted. Did I say 50 memberships? I meant 100 memberships from Artemis. Big thanks for the additional 50 channel members, Artemis. Really appreciate the generosity. So now to our newest 100 members. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, is running the technical operations of the broadcast tonight. Photographers Adam Bernstein and John Pisani have been getting the cameras set up and ready for the coverage this evening as well here at the press site. If you're not already following the fellas on X, you can find our photography team at their handles you see here. John is at John Pisani Photo. Adam is at Aburn NYC. Michael is at MD Kane Jr. While you're there, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. We are also on Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook. We'll also be joined a little bit later in the broadcast with tracking assistance from our friend Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions. Time currently T minus 51 minutes, 34 seconds, and counting. It has been a challenging evening from a weather front for SpaceX to get this mission moving forward. For those who were hoping for an earlier flight closer to midnight, of course, the mission has pushed back a couple of times since then. Now currently targeting a T0 liftoff at 2:59 a.m. Eastern, 07:59 UTC. Coming into this launch opportunity, the meteorologists at the 45th Weather Squadron forecast an 80% chance for violating weather with this 4-hour launch window. Put another way, just a 20% chance for acceptable weather for liftoff. With the count continuing to tick down at this point, SpaceX is now less than 20 minutes away from the point at which they'll need to make the call on the startup prop load, which comes about at T minus 38 minutes. They still do have some time to play with, so if they need to adjust the clock here yet again, that still may happen. Window closes at 4 a.m. Eastern. Taking a look at the latest weather loop from the GOES East satellite. A line of showers has been pushing its way across the Florida Peninsula throughout the course of the evening tonight. For some of the previous launch opportunities, the rain band was extending right across Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, making a launch quite challenging at those earlier times. Been seeing a little bit of venting there from the strong back for off and on within the past 20 plus minutes or so. Hopefully, a good indication that SpaceX is priming to make the call on the start of prop load. As we await the start of fueling, want to pop back over to our live chat here for a second and thank channel member Artemis for gifting yet another 50 channel members, bringing that total gifted tonight up to 150. Really appreciate that, Artemis. Thank you so much for the generosity. And then on top of that, with a $100 super chat, saying, "Come on, Willie. No, I don't do things halfway." With his signature, Leroy Jenkins. Appreciate you, Artemis. Thank you so much. And want to welcome in a new channel member as well, Bradford Ben, joining us with membership at the Pad Leader level. Welcome to you, Bradford. Glad to have you with us. As we await the start of fueling, let's go ahead and talk about what's still ahead for SpaceX on this tanking timeline. Right about at T-minus 38 minutes is when SpaceX will make the call on the start of prop load tonight. SpaceX does its readiness poll electronically, so it can do this a little bit earlier than the T-minus 38-minute mark. Once the go-ahead is given, tanking will start at T-minus 35 minutes with the loading of RP-1, a rocket-grade kerosene, on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages, and liquid oxygen will begin to flow on board the rocket's booster as well. Half an hour before takeoff, SpaceX will start to load cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels on the Falcon 9's first stage, and they'll do the same on the second stage a few minutes after that. The helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T-minus 23 minutes is when second stage RP-1 loading wraps up. And at T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is the start of the strong back chill down. This is when SpaceX is thermally conditioning the feed lines there at the pad prior to loading liquid oxygen in the rocket's upper stage. We'll see this visually as the so-called big vent begins here at pad 40 at about T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds, lasting just under 4 minutes in duration to set the stage for the LOX to flow at the 16-minute mark. T-minus 7 minutes is when the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines begins. At this point in the count, SpaceX will flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. 6 minutes before departure, the first stage kerosene tank is full. And at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the retraction of the strong back away from the Falcon 9 rocket. First, the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings will open up, and then the transporter erector otherwise referred to as the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It stays in that position until liftoff. At that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes before liftoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full. Same will be true on the second stage about a minute after that. At this point, the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 has entered into its automated startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will then give their go for launch call T minus 45 seconds. The engine ignition command will be given at T minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Once again, currently targeting that departure at 2:59 and 40 seconds Eastern, 07:59:40 UTC for those around the world. Just under 42 minutes from now, just about 4 minutes away from the call on the start of prop load. Just under 38 minutes to go at this point as the clock continues to tick down. Presumably at this point, SpaceX has in fact given the go-ahead for the start of fueling. So we'll be watching for those signs of fueling once we pass T minus 35 minutes. In the meantime, taking a peek back at our live chat here, want to thank channel member Master Dadbane for being a member with us now for 7 months at the power leader level. Who says, woohoo, 7 months. Thanks to Will and the rest of the Spaceflight Now team. Thanks for the good words and for rocking with us for 7 months and counting. Also, another big thank you to channel member Artemis for yet another $100 super chat. And appreciate the words of encouragement to try to help others hit that super chat button as well. Really appreciate the support, Artemis. And the words of encouragement. Of course, while we certainly welcome and appreciate those of you who are able to support the channel by using the YouTube super chat feature, and of course to our enduring support from our wonderful channel members as well, make these live launch opportunities possible. But one big way that you can also support that is free and easy to do is if you're not subscribed, you can just hit that subscribe button below. T minus 35 minutes and counting. Given that SpaceX's count continues to progress, presumably they have given the go ahead for the start of prop load, which is now underway, loading RP1, a rocket grade kerosene on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages, as well as liquid oxygen on board the rocket's booster. Thankfully, tonight is not a night of super excessive heat distortion. So we should hopefully be able to detect that the super cold densified liquid oxygen is loading on board the rocket's booster a little bit more easily than some other nights. Where we're looking right now is if you see the SpaceX lettering on the Falcon booster, just beneath the X in SpaceX, where there's a little bit of a lighter gradation. Right about at that area is where we'll start to see a frost line form and a little bit of vapor in that region too as the super cold densified liquid oxygen begins to load up on the booster. The first stage that SpaceX is using tonight has the tail number of 1090 in the SpaceX fleet. This will be its 10th trip to space and back, following a successful liftoff, targeting a touchdown on the drone ship called, of course, drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas tonight. And we are starting to see that aforementioned vapor there just beneath the X in SpaceX. That good visual cue means SpaceX is, in fact, fueling its Falcon 9 rocket and will be attempting a liftoff here in just a little more than 32 minutes from now.
Previously issued Phase 1 Lightning Watch has been terminated. The strong wind warning has been extended to 0500 hours.
Bit of a mixed bag there on the weather warning front. The Phase 1 Lightning Watch has been allowed to expire, which is good news on the lightning front. The strong wind warning, however, has been extended out to 0500 Eastern. So windy, but a reduction in the chance of interference from lightning. So assuming the winds are going in the right direction and are not overly excessive for SpaceX's launch criteria, that shouldn't be an impediment to liftoff. Of course, we'll continue to keep an eye on that as we get closer to the departure of this Falcon 9 rocket. For those just joining the broadcast, you're watching Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the Starlink 6-103 mission, the flight of 29 Starlink V2 Mini optimized satellites into low Earth orbit. Just under 29 minutes to go before the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. And as you can see with the building frost line on the booster and increasing amounts of vapor as well, SpaceX continues to tank the Falcon 9 rocket at pad 40. Appreciate the more than 650 of you that are with us right now live. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream to allow some more folks to find their way into our live launch coverage tonight. Also want to thank channel member Artemis yet again for yet another $100 super chat. heralding the start of fueling by saying, "Let's go." 10 OT minus 25 minutes, 36 seconds and counting. At this point in the count, SpaceX is loading cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's second stage after starting the process on the first stage uh, about 4.5 minutes ago. Time now just under 23 minutes remaining before the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. 29 Starlink V2 Mini optimized satellites on board this particular vehicle, adding to a constellation consisting of more than 9,600 satellites currently in low Earth orbit. That's according to stats maintained by expert orbital tracker, astronomer, and friend of the channel, Dr. Jonathan McDowell. Taking a look at the live chat, see there was some discussion about the point in time in the year where we are just coming off of one of the more solemn parts of the calendar for spaceflight. Of course, talking about the anniversaries at the end of January, beginning of February, marking the anniversaries of the Apollo 1 fire and the Challenger and Columbia disasters. 2026 being the 40th anniversary of Challenger. So thanks to uh, those in the chat who were discussing it respectfully, and to Artemis for the super chat calling further attention to what is an important moment of reflection for those striving for further advancement and achievement in both human and non-human space flight. But of course, every time it comes to flying humans, that is the most sober of undertakings. Thankfully, we had a successful flight over the weekend of the Crew 12 mission, who arrived safely at the International Space Station to begin their roughly 8-month stay on board the orbiting outpost. So, good flight there. Those 4 humans arrived safely at their destination. Back to the mission at hand here tonight. You can see the start of the big vent as SpaceX conditions the feed lines here at the pad prior to loading liquid oxygen on board the rocket's upper stage. This vent will last just about 4 minutes in duration, setting the stage for liquid oxygen to flow on board the rocket's upper stage. just passing T minus 16 minutes 30 seconds with the big vent tapering off, setting the stage for liquid oxygen to begin to flow on board the rocket's upper stage. This particular Starlink flight, Starlink Mission Group 6-103, was originally expected to fly much earlier, back with its first launch date set for January 30th, and has been delayed a number of times since then. At one point, it got to a stage of things where SpaceX needed to pivot to preparations for Crew 12 and rolled these Starlink satellites back to Hangar X and rolled out the booster that ended up flying the Crew 12 mission, B1101. This mission happened to fall during the period at the beginning of the month when SpaceX had to pause and stood down from launching its Falcon 9 rockets for the better part of a week after an upper stage anomaly seen during the process of getting towards the deorbit burn on a Starlink flight out of Vandenberg Space Force Base. That was Starlink 17-32. Another Starlink mission that was on the docket for around that time, Starlink 6-104, hasn't been put back on the schedule as of yet. There are Starlink missions listed out by SpaceX through February 26th, and it is not among them. So we'll wait and see when that mission does reappear on the manifest. Plenty more Starlinks to cover throughout the month of February, though. Also, keeping our eye out for further announcements regarding the upcoming launch of Blue Origin's New Glenn 3 mission, set to launch AST Space Mobile's Bluebird 7 satellite. The company announced that launch was targeting a liftoff in late February, but haven't heard much further about that since. So we'll keep tabs on that and let you know when a launch date is more firmly on the calendar for that next flight of a New Glenn rocket. Meanwhile, coming back to this Starlink flight with 12 and a half minutes remaining on the clock, talking a little bit more about the payload that's on board. Got 29 V2 Mini optimized satellites heading into low Earth orbit. This is SpaceX's 14th Starlink flight of the year so far. These satellites, which are manufactured up in Redmond, Washington, as you can see here in the facilities, this B-roll provided by SpaceX. The V2 Mini optimized satellites have a considerably lighter mass than their predecessor V2 Minis. The optimized versions clock in at about 1,267 pounds or 575 kilograms versus the prior version of the V2 Minis, which were roughly 800 kilograms or 1,760 pounds. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters tip to tip. These satellites use argon Hall effect thrusters for in orbit maneuvering. These particular satellites will be deployed at about 168 miles or 271 kilometers in altitude at a 43-degree inclination. Time now T minus 10 minutes, 18 seconds, and counting. The Falcon 9 first stage booster that is launching tonight has the tail number of 1090 in the SpaceX fleet, looking for its 10th trip to space and back. Before we get further in the count, let's talk about its booster history. It began flying on December 17th of 2024 when it launched the O3B mPOWER satellites number 7 and 8 on behalf of one of SpaceX's longest standing customers, SES. That was followed up by the launch of the Crew 10 mission to the International Space Station on board Dragon Endurance, led by NASA astronaut Anne McClain. And the first member of the 2021 astronaut class, Nicole Ayers, also made her first flight on Crew 10, launching on March 14th. That was followed up by a mid-inclination ride-share mission called Bandwagon 3, which launched in late April of last year. Followed up by a couple of Starlink missions. We had Starlink 6-67 on May 14th and 10-18 on June 18th. That was followed up by another pair of O3B mPOWER satellites on July 22nd. And then another mission to the International Space Station, this time of a cargo variety, the CRS-33 mission, lifting off on August 24th of 2025. That Dragon was making its third trip to space. Most recently, this booster has lofted batches of Starlink satellites. It's Starlink 10-59 on October 7th and Starlink 6-79 on November 22nd. That brings up the flight today, about 84 days after its last departure. Just under 8 minutes on the clock. T minus 6 minutes, 16 seconds and counting. Just about a minute past when SpaceX starts to flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, protecting the engines from thermal shock and damage. And right about now is when the first stage RP1 tank should be full. Coming up at about 45 seconds, we should be getting pad level views of the Falcon 9 rocket, as well as mission control audio as well. While we are waiting for that, I want to thank Artemis once again for a very generous $100 super chat and some very kind words, which I will extend those to the full team here at Spaceflight now, since this is very much not a one-person operation. I just happen to be the person behind the mic for the time being. But big thank you for the kind words and for the very generous super chat once again. Also want to welcome a new channel member, Sam.
Strong back retract has started.
Time now T minus 4 minutes, 1 second and counting. Hearing some of the hissing of the vents. A little bit hard to see through the vapor, but the clamp arms beneath the payload fairings are opening up. And the large truss structure, the transporter erector with a strong back, should be reclining now away from the Falcon 9 rocket.
Stage 1 LUX load is complete.
Good call for stage 1 LOX load being complete. We should hear a similar call regarding the second stage liquid oxygen tank at around T minus 2 minutes. T minus 2 minutes and counting.
Stage 2 LUX load is complete.
With that call, the Falcon 9 rocket is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. Right now, you're seeing the start of the ground gas closeouts as SpaceX releases the remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines there at the pad.
Ground gas closeouts has started. Falcon 9 is in startup.
We are now just awaiting the SpaceX launch director to confirm that they are in fact go for launch.
Launch director, go for launch.
And with that call, we are just a little more than 30 seconds away from liftoff of this Falcon 9. $15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-103 mission. Falcon 9 has cleared the towers. Rocket now passing through Max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Should be hearing a call shortly for MVAC chill. There's that good call out. The thermal conditioning of the Merlin vacuum engine. We're coming up on a few events now in fairly rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff for MECO coming up at around T plus 2 minutes and 24 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation and then the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine. Payload fairings should jettison at about 3 minutes into flight. SpaceX is roughly 10 minutes from MECO, 10 seconds from MECO, excuse me. There you have MECO. Stage separation. Good calls, good visuals from the SpaceX onboard cameras. Coming up to fairing separation next. And there go the fairings. Great work by the tracking team tonight. A little challenging with the clouds, especially further down south for Pete. As you can see, managed to get it back and tracking quite well. Now 3.5 minutes into the flight. Coming up next is the start of the 3-engine entry burn for the Falcon 9 first stage booster. That's beginning at T plus 6 minutes and 8 seconds, lasting less than 30 seconds. But that burn does help to dramatically slow the booster down as it prepares for a return to land on the drone ship a short fall of gravitas. And a clearer view of the upper stage from the press site. Adam's tracker still has eyes on the Merlin vacuum engine. Looks like a star passing through view as well. A little more than 5 minutes into the flight, you're taking a look through the inner stage in the box in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. Coming up to the start of that entry burn here in a little more than 30 seconds. And with the conclusion of the entry burn, coming up next is the start of the single engine landing burn, which will take the booster 1090 down to the drone ship of shortfall of gravitas. A successful landing today would be the 142nd good landing for that vessel. Good call regarding the second stage flight termination system now having been safed.
Stage 1 transonic.
Booster traveling below the speed of sound now. Roughly 10 seconds to the start of the landing burn.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And
Back shutdown.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And with that good call for an orbit insertion, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 will now coast until T plus 53 minutes, 52 seconds. There will be a roughly 2-second burn on that upper stage engine to circularize the orbit. The Starlink satellites will deploy at T plus 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 59 seconds post liftoff. Got a roundup of our camera views here showing the departure of the Falcon 9 rocket to begin its journey this evening, or very early morning, however you want to think about it. So we'll get those ready for you and bring them in here in just a moment or two. And we've got the mission replays ready for you. So let's go ahead and start with the wide view from Adam Bernstein. On to John's turn basin next. Wrapping things up with Adam's press site tracker. And with the replays done now, let's go ahead and pivot to our mission stats as they currently stand. With a good liftoff and landing of the Falcon 9 first stage booster that marked. There we go. That was the 10th flight of Falcon Booster 1090. This was SpaceX's 601st Falcon 9 rocket launch to date. This was SpaceX's 19th Falcon 9 launch of the year so far. This was the company's 535th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was SpaceX's 164th orbital launch within the last 365 days. The 307th orbital launch from Pad 40 and the 362nd overall orbital launch from this site as well. Here's a bar chart representation of the Falcon family of rocket launches. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 142nd good touchdown on the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. That marked SpaceX's 469th drone ship landing and the 572nd SpaceX booster landing to date. This is the 573rd overall landing of an orbital class rocket. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 10th flight from the Sunshine State, the 20th from U.S. soil, the 22nd from a U.S. rocket company, and the 36th orbital launch around the world. There have been 3 mishaps so far this year. Here is a look at the Cape bar chart in our global pie chart where things currently stand. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up tonight for the broadcast. A big thanks to moderators Jeff Hansen and Aussie Space Girl for helping us out in the chat this evening. Thanks as well to channel member Cumulus Granatus for helping to answer folks' questions in the chat throughout the coverage as well. And big thanks to Artemis for the many generous super chats and channel member gifting. Thanks to our friend Pete Carstens with Max Q Productions for some stellar tracking work, as well as to some great videography by our team, Adam Bernstein and John Pisani. If you're not following the fellows on X, here are their handles one more time up on the screen. Lots of great work over the past week between Falcon and Vulcan launches. So if you haven't had a chance to review some of the photos and video that they captured, you can see some of their work up on their respective social handles here. Thanks as well to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, who's been running the technical operations of the broadcast this evening. Most importantly, though, thanks to you for wherever you've been watching from. We certainly appreciate your time and attention and look forward to welcoming you back in when next we have a launch to cover. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We will see you next time, folks. Until then, bye-bye.